I'm sure you all will introduce yourselves to us first, right?
Do I have to touch anything? Okay. Guess not. Good afternoon. My name is Asia Bonner, and on behalf of Team 58 and the University of Michigan, it is my delight to present to you our solution for affordable housing for veterans, Heritage Point. Before I begin, I'd like to take some time to thank the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as the Housing Authority for Bergen County and our jurors here today. Thank you for your time. Joining me on stage this afternoon is Mitch Hers and Allie Andrews. In the audience, we also have Amina Kirk and Oren Bradvine, who will join us later for questions. So, to begin, our vision for the Heritage Point Development Project is to improve the quality of life for veterans, bring together the greater Emerson community, and through responsible design, development, and operations, protect the environment. And finally, and most importantly, we believe Heritage Point will serve as a scalable and replicable model that will preserve affordable housing permanently for our veterans. So our innovative approach to affordable housing for veterans centers on the formation of a community land trust. And it also considers the sobering realities that many of our veterans face. Nearly 2,000 of the county's veterans, Bergen County veterans, live in poverty. And what we know about the median home prices in Emerson is that it's largely out of reach for many people, as well as our veterans, home ownership, that is. And then also, as we heard from our friend from Post 269 back in March of the American Legion, lost connections between veterans who served in different wars or represent different generations has contributed to a diminished base of sort of social supports from which the veterans would draw from to cope with some of the challenges that they face. And so, as we see with the demographic statistics listed there, while the majority of our veterans are over the age of 65, there's still a fair number of veterans that are young and middle-aged. And so we believe that Heritage Point, along with the anticipated renovations for the DeBond House, will bridge those will bridge the divide between generations and connect the broader community on site. And so I'd like to talk a little bit more about the concept of community land trust and how it will apply to our site. We believe building off the existing partnership between the Housing Authority as well as the American Legion, they can protect the use and value of the land through ownership of the land. Also, the CLT will act as a developer, creating housing units for sale or for rent. The residents will be selected based on income eligibility and need. And then under the structure of the CLT, you'll have the CLT owning the land, as I mentioned before, and the residents having the option to purchase or rent the unit. Additionally, an important feature of the CLT is that it has an internal governance structure that would require equal representation from our prospective Heritage Point tenants, as well as the surrounding community, and then representation from the local government. And we feel like together, they will be able to continue to manage the site and act as stewards for the land on this site.
So in addition to building a stable community through the Community Land Trust, we also are going to make sure that we provide a community that allows residents to build job skills, build a sense of community, and also have vital services right nearby for them as they live in these units. So the first thing that we've really focused on as we were thinking about the design and thinking about how we kind of transition from public to private space is how that laid out in the actual design of the site. So starting from the right side of the site on the street, it moves from public to more private as you get further inside. So the street and the Debon House and the terraced gardens serve as a public entryway to the site. And then we move into kind of a semi-private back patio and open gatherings, or semi-public back patio and open gathering space. And then finally, we move into more of a semi-private community center with the patios out front of the units. And then the units obviously then play a role in the private space. So within the buildings themselves, we decided to design them as Dutch colonial, which will match the community around them and preserve the continuity of the community around us. This will present a less institutionalized feel for these units, and really allow the residents to feel like they have a home here at Heritage Point. So in addition to providing a really solid sense of community within the site, we also want residents to be able to move out into the community surrounding themselves as well. So on the right side, right by the road in the parking lot there, will be an on-site transportation hub that will take them to vital amenities around the community as well. So the VA, pharmacies, banks, grocery stores, and that access to transit will allow them to engage with the broader community as well. So. And you'll notice in the back of this site, there's a Veterans Services building right on site as well. So this is going to house, kind of back in the private section of the site, this is going to house on-site psychological, VA, and case management services within this building, as well as provide a space for professional development workshops for residents as they grow their job skills and look for jobs outside in the community as well. So. This service building is really kind of the hub of how we build programming that also looks outward on our site. And it's just right outside the door. Really, residents can step outside their door and walk right down the sidewalk to have most of these vital services that they're going to need. Also within this services building is what I think is one of our most innovative programs, which is the woodworking program. This allows residents to gain vital job skills within a woodworking shop in the services building. They can pick up job skills. They can produce pieces that they can then sell in a gallery in the Debon House to the general public. It allows them a space to engage with the public through some of the work that they do, while also building important job skills. Just to the south of the Veterans Services building also is a veterans garden. Each veteran will get their own garden plot that will allow them to kind of experience the therapeutic benefits of gardening as well, right on site. So, and as you see on this site, there's a number of environmental features, but I'm going to come back to the environmental features, and I'm going to have Allie come up and explain some of the more community-oriented programming.
So while Heritage Point is a great place for veterans to live, we also envision it as a new center for the community. In restoring the Debon House, we will use it as a focal point to engage the community with both the site and the veterans. The Great Room space is where the American Legion is currently holding their meetings. We plan to restore this and use that space also, as Mitch mentioned, for a gallery for the woodworking projects the veterans are doing. Community groups can rent out the space and use it. As well, and then out back, there's the patio space and outdoor gathering space. So this kind of serves as an outdoor great room. Once again, it can be used by both the community and the residents. Out front, as Mitch mentioned on the site plan, there are the terraced gardens. This makes the front of the building more inviting and reorients the building toward the street. We're going to move the front door back to the street side of the building as it was originally designed. Also, what's important is the year-round programming. Not everything's beautiful year-round, especially in the East Coast, so we're trying to take into account weather, how we can use the indoor and the outdoor space. So for example, in the fall, we'd have pumpkin carving with the local elementary school, and this is where elementary students and veterans could work together to carve pumpkins, decorate the space. And there's the Emerson Woods directly across the street. This is 20 acres of preserved and accessible open woodland space. There's already many activities happening there, but now the Debon House can act as a community launching point for new events where people can meet there and go and explore the woods. In the winter, there's yoga that will take place in the Great Room. This can be facilitated by local community college students. In the spring, there's community garden days, and this is where the community residents can partner up with the veterans and plant flowers in the garden beds. They can learn about the rain gardens on site and other environmental features through environmental workshops. And in the summer, we have the Summer Story Series. And this is an opportunity for local high school students located just down the road and veterans to share their stories with one another. This is both therapeutic for veterans, as well as it increases the connection with the community and fosters this intergenerational connection on site. This is just one of the many interesting programs that we really believe will bring the community to the site.
So in addition to Allie's points about how we're going to engage the community through programming, we're also going to, I want to highlight the environmental design and how that creates another avenue for us to engage the community through how we have designed this particular site. Through our environmental design, we have created a peaceful environment for residents, increased their job skills, decreased both the environmental footprint and also the amount of money spent on utilities, and also kind of helped create Emerson as a community that will be resilient in the face of climate change. Three highlights in particular that I want to highlight that are particularly innovative. Are first, the east-west orientation of the residential buildings. And these will be bounded on the south by deciduous trees. So these deciduous trees will allow sunlight through in the winter during the shorter days and help keep units warmer, while in the summer they will block the sun and help keep units cooler, decreasing utility costs. Second, we have a very innovative geothermal heating and cooling units that will serve the units within the residential area. This is going to be one of the first geothermal units in the area, and will help us realize 70% savings in heating and cooling. So, a hugely innovative process for us as well was the geothermal piece. Third, we have advanced rainwater collection that will help mitigate the effects of storms on site. You can see kind of in the bottom center of the cutout here is one of the many bioswales that it will put on site that will channel water to the rain garden and other environmental elements that will help mitigate the storm flow from these storms that are coming through. So. While we were thinking about the environmental design, we really put a large emphasis on maintaining as much of the permeable space on site as we possibly could. In our design, over 60% of the site remains permeable surfaces, which will also kind of maintain and help mitigate some of the rain flow as well. In addition, we also maintained as many of the legacy trees and plants to maintain the ecological flow within the community. So. To manage all of this environmental infrastructure, we're going to have a property manager on site, and he is obviously he or she is going to maintain that environmental amenities available here on campus or on our site. In addition, this property manager is going to train residents to maintain some of these environmental features, which will provide additional job skills training for residents. And the property manager will also work with the community at large to help them implement environmentally friendly mitigation effects that they can introduce on their own properties, which will then kind of help Emerson step to the forefront of climate change mitigation. Because of this, because of the environmental steps that we've taken, our site will be certified LEED Gold, and the details are detailed on the right side of this slide. And in addition, we will we also anticipate receiving funding from Energy Star and the New Jersey Climate Choice as well. So to further detail some of the design and financial considerations, I'm going to invite Allie and Asia back up to the stage.
Okay, and this is a detail of one of the ground level units. There's 4 total in each building, so 8 units total. They're all ADA accessible. They have a raised porch for privacy and also, once again, to give a communal sense of ownership of this outdoor space. You access the upper units by utilizing one of the 2 shared staircases. That is, again, to decrease the amount of building and to make it more efficient. And it is oriented east and west to maximize the southern exposure, to allow the most natural light in for mood enhancement, as well as just to reduce the costs. And by doing that, we've also reduced the size of the east and west facade, which will reduce on the wind impact on the building. These are all one-bedroom units with Energy Star certified appliances and in-unit washer and dryers. We were enterprise community partners and other sources have determined that the single unit is the best practice for the permanent supportive housing. It's beneficial for at-risk and previously homeless veterans, and it provides a sense of ownership for the space. These buildings fit well into the site, as Mitch mentioned, by maintaining the Dutch colonial character at the DeBown House and blending in with the surrounding community. We wanted to make sure it didn't look too institutional, too modern, or stand out at all. However, this development is absolutely replicable on other similar sites. And the design choices we made help make this site a financially viable proposal.
So as Ali mentioned, what we know from recent studies from the Enterprise Community Partners Group and other sources is that permanent supportive housing is a safe investment. So as you see here, total costs for the entire site development is proposed at $2.4 million, of which $1.8 million would go to residential construction. We anticipate garnering over $1 million worth of subsidies, primarily from the low-income housing tax credit that would go towards funding the construction of the for-rent properties, and utilizing the home grant that would go towards the for-sale properties. We anticipate getting two-year construction loans that would then translate into a 30-year permanent loan after the 2-year term expires. Additionally, just as background, we anticipate having a cash flow of around $50,000 with an annual debt payment of $46,000, and that would be before the net cash flow. So the most exciting feature we feel, and it sort of really reinforces our overall point about this project, is the opportunity for veterans to build equity. So if a veteran were to purchase a unit and then sell it, say, 10 years from now, we anticipate they would be able to garner about $40,000 in the sales proceeds, which is really an exciting opportunity for them to achieve financial independence. And again, because this is done through the Community Land Trust, it allows the actual unit to maintain its affordability. So, in conclusion, Heritage Point is a comprehensive and innovative solution for the challenges that our veterans face. It leverages both public resources and community support to improve the quality of life for veterans, bring the broader community together, protect the environment, and as I said, most importantly, preserve affordable housing for our veterans permanently. So I'd like to thank you all for listening to us, and also invite my colleagues Amina and Oren on stage to address any questions you might have. Thank you for your time.
Want to start, Deb? Okay, ready? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I would love to hear your thinking or how you got to mixing home ownership and rental units within this project, and maybe some of the challenges you confronted as you developed this concept.
Well, for us, in doing some of the research, we determined or learned that it was really important to give a sense of ownership for our veterans, and to provide for them a sense of independence and a sense of security also. And we know that in this country, home ownership really symbolizes that. Additionally, to address your question around some of the challenges, demographically speaking, we really were struggling to focus on the type of tenant that would be here. We know that a considerable number of the veteran population is older, and so we're trying to figure out what would make sense, what kind of housing needs would serve them best, versus some of the younger veteran population, what would keep them at the site, what would keep them stable. And so we thought having a mix would address both of those issues. Additionally, because some veterans may not be able to work or earn even just the sort of low-end median income, we wanted to provide for rental housing that would be subsidized through VASH or a project-based voucher. So those were some of the things we considered.
And from a social standpoint, actually, we were thinking that the mixture of home ownership and rental might actually help some of these disparate populations of veterans come together in the same community as well. So, kind of back to what the American Legion member said at the beginning of the presentation.
I have a question, if I may. I'm glad you have a lawyer on your team. Is that you, Amina? That sounds good for this land trust model. I'm curious if you considered having an architect or landscape architect on your team, and wondering, are you guys both?
We both are.
You both are? Okay, so my question then goes to you. We've seen other projects that had typically more like 24 units on the site, and it sounds like yours is 16. Your overall total development cost is much lower than others, less than half, I think. Meanwhile, you have geothermal, which can be very expensive. But so I'm just interested in your approach around, your choice around density or maybe lack thereof, and describe a little bit the sort of thought process around the site planning. Also, just really curious about the Dutch colonial and how that fits or doesn't fit, or relates or doesn't relate to the historic. If you thought about the historic guidelines and some of those questions.
Okay. I'll start by answering some of the things that I can remember about that entire question. In terms of density, we didn't want to, as we reiterated, we didn't want this institutional feeling. We didn't want it to seem like an apartment complex. We wanted it to seem more of a walk-up home. We were given the suggestion of about 10 units per acre. This is 1.6 acres. We thought that was pretty appropriate, and we went with that. The De Baan House, there was someone who represented the history of the house and the Dutch colonial, and the New Jersey Dutch colonial, which was interesting to us because we had never heard of it. We thought, well, that would be nice to tie into that, as well as just the surrounding neighborhood. We didn't want to go too modern, too sleek, too concrete, too anything. We wanted it for them to feel like their home belonged in the neighborhood, which is why we stuck with that. You can talk on geothermal.
To address the geothermal question and whatnot, the cost of geothermal is per system installed. So, and then that cost gets distributed through the lifetime of the building. And the square footage that it covers is 1,000 square foot per one unit, one system, 1 4-ton pump, essentially. And so that is, when you get to the scale of 15 systems, which is about what we're installing for this, that's when your price bumps down a little bit from about 18,000, 20,000 per system to maybe 14,000 per system. So we've reached that margin right up there. And additionally, it works just as well on that scale as it would for any other scale.
And once again, it was just to be an innovative version, a model for the area.
Can we go back to the site plan slide? So can you walk me through sort of the differentiation between spaces that would be anticipated as being for the public versus spaces that are specifically for the residents?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so as Mitch was saying, it was kind of a gradient, but it gets a little bit different in here. So normally it's public, semi-private, and private, but we think there's 4 levels here because you're maybe in the public space here, but now you're entering a site. And so we viewed this is where like the community gardening days would happen. A lot of people could gather there. It's seen by the public. And the De Baan House is definitely is where it starts. It's the threshold between the public and the semi-public space that it can be rented out by the community, and it will also be heavily used by the veterans. The back patio starts to get a little more into the private area, but it's still the semi-public private area. And this is where the summertime story things would happen, outdoor barbecues, anything they wanted to have there. And the part where we get to the semi-private would be this raised porch. It's raised up 4 feet to allow veterans to have kind of their open space, but it's theirs. Whereas we imagine that the community would kind of end at this point. They wouldn't really go past that threshold.
Okay, so the services in the building at this end are really just for the residents?
That's for residents, veterans, yes, only.
Okay.
For our Partnership with VA Veteran Affairs, I mean, we could negotiate having other veterans come on site to receive those services because the resources are there. So it'd be open to that broader community, but not the general surrounding community.
Could I pick up on that for just a minute? The woodworking studio is part of Veteran Services.
Yes.
So Veteran Services is both sort of private services to veterans in need, but it's also the woodworking studio that could have a public face to it.
Only so far as the work that would be produced by the veterans in this workshop would be presented in the DeBon House.
So the production you see as being private, and then the product
Right.
moves forward and
That's
has
a great way to
kind of
explain
public
it.
face to it in the DeBon House.
Correct, yes.
Can you walk us through, maybe show the slide in a little more detail, your financing? I'm not sure I was clear. You talked about tax credits and home. Which of those would go to the rental, which to the home ownership? How did you break down your uses and your sources there?
So the low-income housing tax credit obviously can only be applied to the 4 rental units. So combined between the low-income housing tax credit and the home program subsidy, it would be around about a total of $1 million. I can disaggregate that with specific numbers, but just conceptually, so as I said, the low-income housing tax credit would be applied for the 4 rental units. Home grant would go for the for sale units. We did our calculations for the low-income housing tax credits based on total cost for the residential development divided in half, because half are for sale, half are for rental. And so from that figure, we applied the 9% tax base and the 0.85% per dollar calculation, and then generated our total. And so that was the total that would go towards for rental units. For the home base, for the home grant, we derived the total based on what we knew the median income would be for the area, divided it by 3 to come up with our affordable housing sort of figure. And then from there, we generated a calculation based off of the Community Land Trust resale calculator site that said we could garner about $32,000 per unit in home subsidies. So the resident, the veteran, would invest in a mortgage for about $70,000 of that $118,000 total for the unit, and then the home grant would subsidize the difference. That was a lot.
Amina, I was hoping you'd step up and just, we just have 1 minute left. I wonder if you could just talk to us about what's most exciting to you about this kind of innovative financing approach and
Definitely. What's most exciting to me is actually the Community Land Trust. There's a lot of different legislation going on around the country. Some states allow it. People are meeting to decide whether or not it's something that would be feasible. There are definitely examples of communities that are implementing this and being successful. And so it's a question of showing these communities and that they're actually doing this, they're implementing this and it works, and expanding this so that it actually becomes something that is more common, a more common way to secure affordable housing and kind of reduce the effects that neighborhood revitalization can have on affordable housing that we've seen in the past, where as neighborhoods get better, some of the lower income tenants tend to get pushed out as housing prices rise. So especially due to the kind of site-specific things we're going to be doing to make it much more welcoming, and it's going to become a community space, it could be very possible that if we did not have something to secure these housing prices and keep them low, our veterans could be priced out as time passes, and we don't want that to happen. We want this to maintain its space in Bergen as a place where veterans, low-income veterans especially, can stay for some time.
terrific. Okay, I think we're out of time. Thank you very much for your
you.
presentation. Thank you.